This interview originally aired on KROC AM on January 17, 1954. The guest is baseball great Bob Feller of the Cleveland Indians. Feller was near the end of a Hall of Fame career and was in Rochester for his annual Mayo Clinic physical. And he talked with KROC AM's Bob Myland.
Tonight's guest has been a Rochester visitor for several years. During that time, many of our citizens have come to feel a personal interest in him as someone they feel they know. They felt proud when he set an American League season strikeout record and have watched closely a career that is highlighted by 3 no-hit games, 10 one-hitters, and over 40 shutouts. Tonight we're proud and grateful for the chance to talk with the great American player of the great American game, Mr. Bob Feller of the Cleveland Indians. Bob, could you tell us a bit about your beginnings in baseball?
Well, Bob, I was born and reared down here in Iowa, in Van Meter, Iowa, outside Des Moines, about 15 miles west. I started playing grade school baseball and old church league and a lot of American Legion ball. I played 4 years of the American Legion. I played semi-pro. Of course, I played in high school, and I was playing baseball, in fact, ever since I can remember, and even maybe before that. But that was my start until I signed with the Cleveland Baseball Club in 1935. When I was 16, I was signed to a Fargo contract in the Northern League, but I hurt my arm that spring in a high school tournament and went back to Cleveland to have my arm worked on by the Cleveland trainer. The Cleveland Ball Club wasn't going so well at that time, and I was given a chance to pitch an exhibition game, and I looked pretty well. So I was signed to a Cleveland contract to finish up some games that were lost and gain experience, and I've been there ever since.
Well, Bob, while pitching with the Indians, what has been your most satisfying experience?
Well, I've had a lot of satisfaction out of a number of games. I think probably my most satisfying experience was winning my first start when I came back from the Navy in latter part of 1945 after being out of baseball in 42, 43, and 44, and this was in August 1945.
Bob, who, in your opinion, is the toughest batter you have to face, both consistently and in a tight situation?
Well, at the present time, I'd say Williams is about the toughest. Usually a left-hand hitter gives a right-hand pitcher more trouble on account of their style. I'd say right-hand hitters, DiMaggio was as tough as anyone. Bobby Dorr was very tough. Joe Cronin. Of course, I pitched against Roger Hornsby in 1936. He was pinch hitting and managing the St. Louis Browns at that time, and even though he was way over the hill and ready to retire, he was a very tough hitter, but he couldn't move, he couldn't field, but with that bat in the hand, he was very dangerous.
Bob, the Yankees as a team have been a power over the past 5 years to the extent that there has been talk that their so-called monopoly is detrimental to the game. Do you feel that this domination is hurting baseball?
Well, there's a lot of schools of thought on that. I think in a way it should help baseball. It proves that baseball is, if it needs proving, I'm sure it doesn't, that baseball is beyond reproach, at least as far as I'm concerned, and that's what we think of that those terms. The Yankees have a great organization. They have a good farm system. They have smart men managing their ball clubs and in their front office. They have a good scouting staff. They have a lot of money behind them, which doesn't hurt. And not that their players make any more salaries as some of the other clubs. In fact, I don't believe they do. But the Yankee organization is built up and it's been rolling so long now that they do have a lot of young players under contract. They've given them great large bonuses like the Red Sox and some other clubs that are more fortunate in their bank account. But I think the Yankees' domination of baseball is something that the rest of the clubs have to build up to. After all, the Yankees have won the pennant, and not by too many games. Last year they won it by 8 over us. The year before I think it was 2, and the year before that it was 5. So after all, it's not too long a stretch between the second-place club and the Yankees. However, the Yankees always win the World Series, it seems like, in the kind of fashion that it makes them look head and shoulders above all the rest of the clubs, of course, which they are. On paper, the Yankees don't have as good a ball club as the Dodgers, but you don't play baseball on paper.
Well, why aren't more of the American youth sticking with baseball when the potential awards are so great in such an early age?
Well, I think it's a military situation that comes along and picks a young fellow up when he's just about the prime of his life as far as getting in baseball is concerned. It takes him away from the minor leagues. He goes away for a couple of years. He loses maybe his coordination, or at least part of it. He forgets his experience. He may get married when he's in the service, and he comes out with a family, and he cannot take a chance of knocking around the minor leagues 2 or 3 years or more, determining whether he can make it in baseball. And he has to go to work in industry to make that money right away. He doesn't want to take the gamble. I think that's where we're losing more baseball players to industry on account of the military situation the country's been in the last 12, 14 years.
Well, what advice do you have for, say, a boy of high school age interested in a baseball career?
You can get all kinds of advice. First, if a fellow has to have some ability, may have a good arm or be fast as foot or have a good eye, be able to hit a ball fairly well, have a good pair of hands. If he wants to become an infielder, you have to have some natural ability. And I suggest that a young fellow not give up any of his education. If he has a plan to going to college, he go right ahead. I think you can get your college education and still play baseball, as a lot of ball players have proven.
Bob, you mentioned that part of your activity deals with selling Americanism and baseball to the public, and particularly to young people. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Well, with television and numerous forms of other entertainment, baseball perhaps has lost some of their fans. Of course, the boom right after the war, people were baseball hungry to see good baseball. They didn't have their players to watch, and there was a great influence on the gate receipts. The gates went way up, sky high, and then things are kind of leveling off now. Selling Americanism is something that I don't need to think has to be sold. Of course, maybe we do have to sell a little bit more than what we have been at that. Baseball is a game strictly on its merit. America is built upon a society of achievement, and a boy can better his station in life very quickly in baseball.
Well, Bob, you mentioned TV. What effect has that had on baseball attendance and on interest in the game?
Well, Bob, the television situation has been a monster to baseball. They don't know exactly what to do with it, like a lot of other, like football, NCAA, and so forth. I think it'll turn out to be, in the end, a great boon to sports, but I think it's going to take a few years to get television in the place where it should be. We don't want to play our games out there with no audience and everyone sitting in their living rooms watching it. You have to have people at the ballpark to make the ball club feel like producing, even though you are getting paid the 1st and 15th of every month. I think television is going to be a great assistance to baseball in the future.
Bob, we've enjoyed hearing your comments on baseball. Your friends in Rochester are grateful for having you take time out in a crowded schedule to talk about their favorite subject. We're glad to have you visit our town. Come back and see us again. Batteries for tonight's game were 3 Bobs. Bob Feller catching the questions, Bob Milam and Bob Letter throwing them. Good night. See you next week.